Hey everyone, either welcome back or welcome to my channel. And in today's video, I want to talk about the naming of IIH over the past few years and why I think it still confuses people even with using the term idiopathic intracranial hypertension to describe IIH. So before I get too far into any details, time for the intro. Hey everyone, my name is Ashley Stewart. Back in 2018, I was diagnosed with IIH. The long form of this name is called Idiopathic Intracranial Hypertension. Some of you may also know this condition by its older names, either pseudotumor cerebri or benign intracranial hypertension. So if you're curious to learn more about what it's like to live with this condition, or what those of us living with this condition would like you to know, then I strongly encourage you to watch on. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell down below so that you get updated about further videos. I upload new content every Monday and Thursday afternoon. As you know by the intro, this condition goes by so many names. And the reason why I use all three is because all three have been used at some point, usually in the past several decades. So I have to say all of them in case that's what you're used to hearing to describe this condition. So we have benign intracranial hypertension, we have pseudotumor cerebri, or cerebri, some people pronounce it. I pronounce it cerebri. I don't know if that's right or not. I just go with it. And idiopathic intracranial hypertension, which is shortened to IIH, as you know from my intro. And so the older names have been dropped for various different reasons. So the term benign intracranial hypertension was dropped because they found out that this condition is not benign. It can actually lead to blindness and permanent vision loss if the eyes aren't monitored closely enough, or if the condition is never caught at all. That's probably one of the most important parts of why it's important that they diagnose IIH. Also, pseudotumor cerebri was dropped because people hear the word pseudo and they think it's not legit. But if you break down the name, I believe that this actually describes the symptoms a lot better. So, pseudotumor cerebri, if you break it down, from the Latin means false tumor of the brain. I actually have this in my channel banner so that people who are using the older name or have never heard of it know what it translates to. So it's actually false tumor of the brain. Pseudotumor cerebri was dropped because I think it was confusing people and they were only hearing the pseudo, or they were only hearing the pseudo and not the rest of the definition. If you actually do take the time to break it down, people do actually seem to take it a little bit more seriously from my experience and what they do, which is with the term idiopathic intracranial hypertension. I think there's a lot of reasons why this term is confusing to a lot of people, and I think it's because it's such a long name and has such big words in it. Now, when I first was given this as a possibility, I was only told intracranial hypertension because idiopathic by definition means without known cause. So they would have had to rule that out before they actually determined that it was idiopathic. So they said IH at the to begin with, because mine was found through my MRI, as I have said before. I had an MRI back in July of 2018 that finally led the doctors down a diagnosis path that led to a very quick diagnosis. Now, when I look back at this whole thing, the MRI was the one thing I wanted to come back normal because what they were talking about was really scary. If you guys want a different video on what they were thinking about what it could be, let me know in the comments down below. I can definitely talk about that because it was really scary. So I would love to share that story, and I might anyways, just because I might feel like that's a good topic to talk about. But I could definitely do that and move it up if a lot of you are interested. So getting to the term idiopathic intracranial hypertension. So when I describe it to people, I actually break it down for them. So we've covered idiopathic. Intracranial, I think, describes it quite well. Intracranial just means within the head. So that should be self-explanatory, but maybe to people who have never had any experience with medical terminology, it might not be so obvious. So intracranial means inside the head. I think the term hypertension really confuses people. And I don't know. From my experience, it seems to confuse medical people who are not familiar with IIH as much as it does to non-medical people. In medical terminology, hypertension basically just means that there's a high fluid pressure. But I think what happens is what's similar to what happens when we use the term diabetes without thinking, and most people think that you're referring to type 2 diabetes. So when people hear the word hypertension, I think they're automatically thinking of high blood pressure. And I know I did this when I was first given the term. The hypertension to me isn't making any sense, because why would my blood pressure be fine everywhere else but in my head? I think we need a different name, somehow referring to the buildup of cerebrospinal fluid in the head would probably be a little bit better of a definition, in my opinion. I don't know kind of what this would be because I don't have much experience with med terminology. I'm good at kind of translating the medical terms I'm given, but I'm not good at coming up with specific names myself. So if we could figure out how to kind of make it so that we are talking about fluid, then and fluid pressure without using the word hypertension, I think it would be a little bit easier for people to catch on. And then when they find out that it's a buildup of fluid within the head, I have noticed that they tend to take a little bit more notice with it, because especially when you explain that, like, the consequences of having a bunch of fluid build up in the head. So it just gets annoying to me to having to explain, like, this is the long form of the name, but hypertension does not mean what you think it means in this case. And so I think we need a better naming thing for it. And I think all three terms are misleading to a certain degree. So that's my experience with it. I think with this condition, it needs to be named so that it can very well it can very quickly be decoded based upon the name of it. But that's just kind of where I stand with it from my experience with living with the condition for a little over a year and a half now. And the thing I noticed this the most is actually just recently when I broke my ankle, when I'm told, is there anything that we need to be aware about? And I tell them IIH, and they go, what now? And I'm like, idiopathic intracranial hypertension. And then they're like, and then they do a triple take and they're really confused. So they seem to get really confused with the word hypertension, and just from my experience. If you guys have anything that you would like to add to the video, feel free to leave a comment down below. And as for now, that's it for today. Bye everyone!